It's my immense pleasure to introduce today's speaker of the webinar. We have amongst us Mrs. Madhveshwari Mase, Advocate, Bombay High Court, Aurangabad Bench. She holds diploma in cyber law from Asian Schools of Cyber Laws. She is also having diploma in cyber prosecution and defense specialist. She is also digital evidence specialist. She has successfully completed a certification course in international e-commerce law. She is bachelor in law and social legislation from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Marathwada University. Madam is having a huge disputes. She is working as a treasurer of Dr. Parnerkar Institute of Law and Research. Madam has published various articles in national and international journals. On behalf of Korea, I welcome you, Madam, and request you to guide our students. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, Manjari, ma'am. Advocate Mase, ma'am, I request you kindly to proceed further with your able guidance and motivation and inspiring words about this internet security, cyber security, and the acts which we are not quite aware as a student, as a parent, as a mother, as a father, and even as a student. Every one of us here is eagerly waiting to listen to you. So over to you, Madhveshwari ma'am.
Good morning, one and all. Thank you, Dhananjay sir. It's really a pleasure to be here with all the students and interacting with you. I must say that this is a very vast subject. I'll try as I can in this short span of an hour that we will be having. And feel free to ask whatever questions you have in your minds, and I'll try to answer any doubts that you may be having, and we may, I hope we have a great session ahead. Now, everyone, since we are here in a Zoom meeting, I think are aware of the basics of the information technology. That is, we know what are devices, we know what is internet, we know what is connectivity, we know what is social media. So I don't think, and of course the generation of me, that is the 11th and 12th, the teens, they are the ones who are much more advanced than we people handling the net. Of course, I first started handling internet, or I got my first computer way back in 1995. That was when the computers actually came to India. And it's been a large change and way the information technology sector has changed over the periods. We first used to have huge desktops. Now the connectivity has come down to our mobile phones. So devices, basically, the Information Technology Act came much later. It came in 2000, but we got what do we say? We got the first whiff with the technology was in the somewhere in the year 95, 96. That is when we first started getting the internet connectivity. We used to have a dial-up connection through our BSNL lines, and that was the only telephone network that was available in this country. From there, we have now traveled to 4G connections and connectivities. Still, the development was not as much as we see today, or over even if we started it in 95, 96, till I will say till 2020, that is 2020, it was not as, the use was not as much as we have started using in this pandemic situation. From March onwards, the use has gone totally, it has grown 1,000% more than what we used to use it prior to March 2020. And that is where a lot of things have changed. The scenario has changed to a great extent. Everything now, as Google came into existence, as the search engines got developed technologically, everything started getting into like every search basically was changed to search on the internet. Like now it has become very common factor that you want to know anything, you do what you do is you just Google it. So Google or a search engine or the internet has practically become first and the last resource for us for any kind. But research shows that only research shows that around 24% of have on the internet is a false content. Now, from where does this false content come in? We are the only ones who load up contents on the internet. The content doesn't come from somewhere else or some different planet on the internet. Every device that gets connected to the internet is a device which is giving out some information to the others. So every time you log in, whatever device you log in from, you log in from a desktop, you log in from your laptop, your iPad, your iMac, your phone, your smartphone, any device. Every device has a unique identity number which gets when it gets connected to the net, and that device gets tracked. That is what we call as digital footprint. First, that is your first footprint. That is how you get identified on the net. So you may have noticed that whenever you log in from one device, suppose you are having a Gmail account and you are logged in from your phone, but you go to a friend's place or you go to some other place and you take out another device or you take up a new device and you log in. Immediately you get a confirmation mail on a device from which you are already logged in, where you are the person who has logged in from some other device. Now, how does this happen? This happens because one device is already identified on the net to or to your Google account, and therefore whenever you use a new device, it immediately asks for a confirmation. Now, this is a security measure that it has, that whether you are only the person who has logged in. If you are not the person, that is someone else has logged in from your account from some other device, in your account from some other device, immediately a security measure gets triggered and you receive a mail asking you or a message asking you whether you are the same person who has logged in from new device. Now, two things happen in this. One, of course, it is a security measure. But second, in the terms of the data collection, it collects the data or it identifies that now XYZ person is using two devices. So this data gets collected. Now, how does this data gets collected? Someone may feel that I'm jumping from one topic to another topic, but it is so interrelated that we can't help jumping from one topic to another topic. So now we are jumping to data collection. So how is data collected? Everything that you do, every single key that you press when you are online is your data. It is not only what you type, it is not only what video you upload, it is not only what content you watch, it is everything, every like that you put on your social media account, every dislike that you put on your social media account. You watch a YouTube video, you have an option of like and a dislike. So every like or dislike is counted. So it is not counted. The artificial intelligence, that is AI, that we are seeing developing so much over a period of time, is an algorithm, creates an algorithm. You must have seen or experienced, and many of us have experienced this. You look for a particular kind of content on, say, YouTube. Suppose you are someone who likes classical music. So if you are searching for classical music in the search bar, if you put in for some classical musician, let us, for example, take an example of you are searching for Pandit Kumar Gandharva's music. What happens later is, of course, you get whatever videos are there on the YouTube with relation to Pandit Kumar Gandharva. No doubt about that. But it starts suggesting you similar videos. You may be interested in this video. You may be interested in that video. We all have experienced this. I guess so. So how does this happen? So the AI or the algorithm figures out that, okay, Madhaveshwari is a person who is interested in classical music because she's searching for Kumar Gandharva. So she will be interested in 1, 2, 3, 4 other classical musicians who are related with it, or similar music. So wherever the term classical music comes in, even that content is shown to you, or you start seeing that content on your YouTube page. So this is one example that I am giving, that how data is collected. Now the data has one, Madhaveshwari. Since you have a Google account, your entire data is there. She is for 42 years old. She is a lawyer. She listens to music. She listens particularly to classical music, or she likes classical dances. Then she searches for content with relating to law. So whatever this data creates on the internet. Now, what is this data used for? This data is used in multiple ways. Whatever it is, where your home is, you search on a Google map, you put in your home, you put in your office place, you visit some places, you check into places. So I check into PVR cinemas, I check into some mall, I check into some theater, I check into some marketplace. So all this data. So where am I? Every time I travel, I put up a status on my Facebook and I say that I'm traveling, I'm on road. How am I traveling? If I'm on an airport, I put up I check in, suppose at the Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport. So that is how I am putting my digital footprint on the net. Now this all constitutes a bundle of data for me. Now, how is this data used? This data is used in a number of ways. One, of course, it facilitates you, because if you are traveling, the Google Maps will start giving you directions. It will start showing you these are the heavily trafficked areas. There's a traffic congestion over here. And it will also start showing you an alternative route as well. Essentially, what happens is ultimately what happens is you get monitored, one. Secondly, you are used as consumers. Why? Because this data ultimately, no matter what the data privacy policy says, ultimately the data goes down to the corporate world. And it is perfectly fine as long as it goes, it's used in that way, only to the extent of you are seen as consumers and advertisements that are specifically targeted for you. So whenever there is a classical music concert somewhere, I'll start getting advertisements with regard to that. Why? Because it knows that I am someone who is interested in classical music. I'll start getting, also have experienced, and if someone has not had an experience or noticed it, you may have an experience, but you may not have noticed it. Let us say that I search for, let us say I want to buy some new shoes. So I search for shoes on some merchant site. Let us say I search for it on Flipkart. So what happens subsequently to it is I start getting advertisements on every platform that I am connected to. That is, I'll get a mail, I'll get a message, I'll see sponsored ads on Facebook, I'll see sponsored ads on YouTube, all relating to shoes. Why? Because I have searched for purchase for shoes. Now, has anyone experienced this? Whatever you try to search for on one merchant site, similar merchant site or other merchant sites start showing you similar advertisements. So if you search for one particular commodity, shoes I'm taking as an example, any particular commodity that you may say, you may search for a laptop, all kinds of laptops would be advertised to you on all kinds of social media platforms. How does it come? It comes from the data that is collected from you. So what is Madhaveshwari searching for right now? Madhaveshwari is searching for laptops. What is Madhaveshwari searching for right now? Madhaveshwari is searching for headphones. What is Madhaveshwari searching for now? Madhaveshwari is searching for clothes. Now she's searching for clothes for her son or her daughter. So, and these advertisements are shown to you until you actually buy it from some merchant site. You may search it on Flipkart initially, but you may purchase it ultimately from Amazon. Doesn't matter. But as long as you purchase it, till you purchase it, you'll keep seeing those advertisements. I hope everyone has experienced this. It doesn't happen, mostly it doesn't happen that we just see and we just buy. Now the tendency is that we keep on searching for something, some better deal, some better product, and thereafter, so until the time you actually purchase that product, you will be targeted as a consumer. Now you are targeted as a consumer because there is a targeted advertisement policy of all the merchant sites or all the persons who are selling something on the internet. So they are constantly in need of a data. Now that is how the data is used. So whatever you do, everything, every like that you give, suppose I'm not searching for anything, I don't go to any merchant site to buy anything. But what happens? Facebook now has changed a lot over a period of time. So let us suppose that there is some sponsored ad. It keeps on popping up sponsored pages before you. Suppose now since in the algorithm, it has noted me as a woman and an Indian woman. And it notes me as a woman who wears saris. So it will start showing me initially sites that are selling saris. So if by chance I stop on that site, I check out the product, what happens is you'll note that there is no question of your liking it. There is no question of your buying it. It's only how much time are you waiting on a particular place or a particular site. So if it is noted that you are stopping at a particular sponsored site for more than 3 to 4 seconds, now that is what we call as the blink period. So blink period, the period during which your attention or any person's attention is caught. So if I'm stopping at some page for more than 3 to 4 seconds, it means that it has caught my attention. It means that I'm interested. It means that if I'm pursued with it, I may buy it. And then what happens is I start seeing all the sponsored advertisements with regard to saris. Now again in that, see, this is where this gets very complicated or very interesting also. Now it's not only saris. So it will first show me handloom saris, then it will show me some chiffon or something like that, the man-made material, and then it will again categorize me into whether I am a person who is interested in cottons or I am interested in chiffons, I am interested in silks. Because if I spend more time looking at silk things, it will start showing me silk saris. If I spend more time looking at handlooms, it will start showing me handlooms. You may cross check it with your own experience. I guess many of you must have started remembering what is happening on their Facebook page or on their social media platforms. So that is how your data is collected. As far as it is for commercial purposes, I think it is quite okay. Now we are jumping on to some other part of it, or a more serious part of it. In the last few years, with the more use of social media platforms, particularly more use of WhatsApp and more use of Facebook, because those are the platforms which are more popular. There are other platforms as well, but we don't use them as much as we are using these two platforms. So 90% of people, I guess, use these platforms. That is why I'm taking the example of Facebook or YouTube or WhatsApp. Nothing against Google Link or Facebooking, the connected corporations. But because we are using it and how they are being used, that is what I'm trying to point out. Now, since you are all 11th and 12th students would soon be entitled to vote and be responsible citizens, and you'd come out of that childhood phase and would be considered as adults for the purpose of law. That is why this becomes more important now. What we are seeing, the social scenario that we are seeing, is the polarization of thoughts. You are either a very staunch supporter of some ideology, you are a staunch supporter of some political party, and what happens out of that is you start posting. You may not be an actual supporter or a volunteer of some political party or some ideology. You may not be that. You are a very straightforward person going on with your life. You have nothing to do with any political party. But at some point of time, what happens is you like some. Of course, when we are reading our newspapers, where we are reading the news, when we are listening to news, and as we study different things, we tend to have some ideology. That is the ideology that we may have at our homes, the ideology that we may develop after reading books or coming in contact with the different people who hold some ideology. And we ultimately develop, and we all have some ideology of our own. We all follow some religion, because India is a country with diverse religions. So we all follow some religion, some sect, some philosophy, and therefore it can't be said that we are a total. And of course, there is also a group of people who are totally neutral, who don't follow anything. But that itself also is a kind of ideology that they follow, that we don't follow anyone. Whatever group you may fall in, the moment you like or you stop on one ideology, what happens is you start seeing posts from the same sect, from the same color, from the same section. And over a period of time, it has an capacity to mold your opinion, to change your opinion, to change the way you see things, to change the way you look at things. Now, that, in my opinion, is more of a part where we should worry about, because this is a data. Last elections, America is again going through the second elections. The last elections, where Mr. Donald Trump was elected, there was an allegation that the American elections were rigged. The American elections were influenced, and they were influenced by an XYZ company. They were influenced by some country, and therefore, now how that was done is one part of investigation, or how it was done. They say that the way the posts were created, the way it was projected to people, and that is how they were able to change the way people thought about at that time in the elections. And that is how they say that it was influenced. Days are not far when even someday we would be hearing that Indian elections were influenced. I'll just give you an example. The last general elections that we had in India, when the BJP government came into power the second time. So at that time, I'm not making any comment with regard to the elections of the political party. What I'm trying to point out over here is my experience as to what happened at that time, how data is collected. So at that time, what we all were doing is, I have voted, have you voted? We would vote, we would have that black mark on our finger, and then we would post a picture like this. We would take up a selfie and we would post it. I have voted, have you voted? Now, in a way, it was a kind of a campaign where we were all trying to make people come out and vote. Now, what happened in those elections or at that time was, I went and voted and I didn't put a picture on Facebook. But I received a sponsored or a message from Facebook on my homepage or my wall, where it said, where it was having a counting meter that so many lakh people have voted. Have you voted? So what happened is that set me to think as to how is it that Facebook has a data of so many people have voted. Now, mind you, in Indian context, legally, even the election commission does not know how many people have voted till the end of the day. That is when the polling stops, that is voting stops. Till that time, even the Election Commission of India, which holds the election, does not have a concrete data in its hand as to how many people have voted or how much voting has taken place, even booth-wise. Even the booth officer does not know how much percentage of voting has happened or at a particular booth till the voting ends, and that is in the evening 6 o'clock. But 10:30, 11 o'clock, Facebook is showing me number of all the people that have voted all over India. Now I start thinking, how is it doing it? From where is this data coming up? I didn't do anything on that day for some time. Again at 4 o'clock, it gave me the same message with the number increased, and it said that now so many people have voted. Have you voted? So for Facebook, I had not voted because I had not put on a picture of showing that I had voted. For Facebook, I had not voted because I didn't put on a post saying that I have voted, please vote. So the taglines were vote, I have voted, have you voted? Thereafter, even the pictures that we put in, those were counted, and that is how the data was collected. Now, someone will say, how does it harm? Right? It harms in the way that now Facebook has a data which shows how Indian public votes. Now, someone interested, some political party interested, or some country interested in influencing the votes of the Indian people would be able to have this data ultimately to decide as to how the votes can be changed. Now, that is how we need to think about what we are doing. These are the digital footprints that we are living. This is on the internet. These are what we are living behind as our characterization, as our identity on what we are, how we are, and that is how it is being developed, that is how it is being collected, and that is how ultimately we get influenced by things. See, advertisement is something which comes in only for the purpose of influencing your way of thinking. You keep on seeing an advertisement, you are constantly bombarded. That is the way that is human psychology. You keep on seeing some things again and again, you get familiarized with those things. Today I am talking only about data and data privacy. And so how is it that I should protect myself? Now, this is only one part of it. The collection of data is one part of it. It's a collective influence. But now let us say a lot of crimes happened because we put in some data on our social accounts. See, a few years back, this was more common. Junior KG students, senior KG students, first standard students, these small kids were kidnapped. A lot of offenses of those kinds happened. Now, those who were kidnapped, how were they kidnapped? The kidnapper knew the child's name. The kidnapper knew the school's name. The kidnapper knew the location. From where did that person get the information about your child? We gave it to it. Why? Because we were so excited about our child going to school that we take a picture of the child wearing the brand new uniform and the child going to the school. And then what happens? And we put on a post. First day, so happy, and all the things that we feel, we put it on our social media. But what we forget is 2-3 things. One, that this is not a post that should be put on a public platform. Facebook gives you an option of to whom you want to share your post with. Okay, you are happy and you want to share it with your friends. But then it gives you an option. Friends of friends, public. There are some things we need to say to public. Those are public opinions, which in other terms or in physical world, you will go and stand in the public square and you will air your opinion. You will voice your opinion, irrespective of who is listening to you. So that is public opinion. That is what you need to tell the public. Like what I'm addressing now is I'm addressing a public. So this is something which it doesn't matter to whom I am saying, because I want a large number of people to hear it. That is one category of posts. The second category of posts is very private. I would not share some things with public. I will share those things only with my family, with my friends. Now, you have to categorize when you are posting as to with who is to see your post. I have to be very conscious about it, whether it's my friends who are going to see, or it's I want to expand the circle and the friends of my friends will also see it. That is where I decide as to how the information that I'm giving out is going out to other persons. Now, how these kids were kidnapped. Every time it was found that there were people in the friend list who were actually not known to the persons whose kids were kidnapped. Then the obsession with having a large number of friends on your friend list. So what I do is, anyone sends me a friend request, I accept the friend request. I do not verify whether the account is fake. I do not verify whether the account is genuine. I do not verify. I even don't take a pause and think as to whether I really know this person. As a person or personally, I do not accept friend requests whom I do not know personally in the physical world. If I have not met that person face to face, one to one, I will not accept that person's friend request. Why? Because I do not know that person. Sometimes what happens is the friend, keep on getting suggestions that there is one mutual friend. So someone is your friend and an ex person is your friend's friend. So you get a request from that person, but you do not know. The thing is, okay, X person is my friend and this Y person is X person's friend. So it is okay to add him to or her to my friend list. It's not okay because you do not know that person personally. The question, the rules change when you are a public figure, but in general, when you are not a public figure and your account is not a public account, the things are whether you do not know if the person is your friends. And in every offense where the child was kidnapped, it was found that there were some such persons who were accepted into the friend request, who were able to see the post, and they were the persons who actually or ultimately were responsible for kidnapping of the child. So we gave all the information about our child, what is the school, what is the school timing and everything, because the moment you put in a picture of the child wearing a school uniform, the person who is looking at the picture knows which school it is, where the school is located, what are the school timings, and the person knows your child's name, the person knows everything about you, even to convince the teachers to hand over the child to you, to the kidnapper. And that is how kids were. This is something which we need to think about, which we need to know while posting any post on the social media platform. So privacy is something which we should think about for ourselves and guard ourselves. Actually, Dhananjay, I should go on to the IT Act and the offenses that are committed under the IT Act. But I think it's nearly an hour that we are approaching. Should we stop over here and have a question answer session, sir? Or should I go on with the offenses that are contemplated under the Act?
I'm at 40 minutes.
Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
Okay.
Hello.
I hope it's not getting I hope the kids are not getting bored, because I'm talking constantly, and I know the 4 seconds is what is the blink period. So I don't know whether I've got their attention or not.
No, we are connected with you. We are connected with you, ma'am.
So yes, I'll just wrap up in another 10-15 minutes. This was data privacy of the part that we should be thinking about whenever we are having our registering our presence on the internet. Now what happens is, now some of the offenses. XYZ is my friend. We all do this. A few years back, or rather till I actually studied the IT Act, even I was inadvertently doing it. So XYZ is my friend. Post some picture. And I feel that it's okay to download it. IT Act says, no, it's not okay to download it. So every time you're downloading any content, whether it's copyrighted, whether it's not copyrighted, you are not permitted to download such content without the permission of the person who has uploaded the content in the first place. So be it a song, be it a video, be it any post, be it a text, be it a book, be it a picture, be it a painting, anything, even if it's my personal picture, I take a photograph and I upload it, you are not entitled to download it. You have to seek the permission of the person who has uploaded it. Now someone may say that, okay, XYZ is my friend and it's okay to download it. No, it's not okay. The law says that you cannot do it. Now, where does it come to? It comes to, if such kind of behavior, or let us go a step further. You are all in your teens and it's quite normal that it may happen. You like some girl or you may like some boy, vice versa. Both way. This is something that will go both way. So you like some girl or you like some boy, and you start following that person. Following not in the terms of pressing or activating the follow button. Of course, you can do that, quite legal.
Talking.
But after that, what you start doing is you'd start checking out that person's activities constantly. That is, you start keeping an eye on that person. A few years back, this used to be in the physical world. That is, boys following girls from the college to home, from the class or tuitions to home, from home to tuitions. And that was under the Indian Penal Code, the offense of stalking. But then after the Nirbhaya case, when there was an amendment to the Indian Penal Code, section 354D got added. And then we came up with stalking even in the cyberspace. Because we are not stalking now in the physical world. What we are doing is we are keeping a constant track of the other person on the devices. So where that person is going, with whom that person is meeting, whether the person is partying, whether the person is meeting up with friends, whether the person is going to a class, and constantly checking pictures, constantly videos, constantly visiting that particular page. Maybe it's a Facebook page, you may be in the friend list, you may be accepted in the friend list, but if you are doing it constantly in a way that the other person is not comfortable with. I'm using the word very specifically, not comfortable with. So if a boy is constantly following a girl and in very clear words, in a very clear manner, in a very clear message, gives out a message that she's not interested. And despite that, you keep on sending messages, or you keep on checking out. See, messages need not always be a message on a personal window. It can also be a comment on some post that is made. And if it is unwelcome, it is an offense under section 354D of the IPC, and you are looking at a very long prison sentence of 7 years. So some things that you feel are okay are not okay even under the cyber law. You have your friend's laptop and you access it without his or her permission. You have committed an offense. You see your friend typing a password to access his device or her device, and subsequently you use that password to access. You have committed an offense. You give your ATM PIN number to your, let us say, even to your spouse. It is a breach of condition of using the ATM card. You cannot give it to you. Recently, there was a case where the wife was holding an ATM card and she gave it to her husband because she was not well. And she permitted him to withdraw the money from the ATM account, giving him the PIN. What happened was, most of the times we have experienced this. The card was swapped, the amount was shown to be debited, but the amount was not dispensed from the ATM. When complaints were made, banks took a stand that you have compromised with the PIN, and therefore we were not liable to make the payment. And the court ultimately held that the woman had compromised with the PIN because she gave the PIN to her husband. Because in law, husband and wife are two independent. So never compromise your PINs. You cannot give your PIN even to your family member. If you are to withdraw the money, the court in that case said, or the bank, even the bank in that case said, that she should have given a check for withdrawal of the money. Compromising of ATM pins. And this is how the small things, and it is all for our safety. You may say that this is unreasonable. It is not unreasonable. What happens? A lot of people, you keep on yourself logged in. logged in your devices. Your devices are constantly logged in. You are logged in on your Facebook, you're logged in on your WhatsApp, you're logged in on you're logged in your Gmail account or any email account. It may be Yahoo, or it may be Hotmail, it may be any other email account. You're constantly logged in. The moment you are constantly 24 hours logged in, you are vulnerable to be attacked. You have to sign out of your devices every time you stop using the device. It is as simple as that. I'll just give you an example of a case that had happened a few years ago. There was this girl who was living in a hostel, a young college girl. She had a desktop with a webcam that was attached to it. And it so happened that the device was constantly connected to the electrical power point. Now you may say that if it is connected to the electrical power point, but if the device is switched off, how is it going to be of any harm to any person? But mind you, what happens is when you are constantly logged in, that is, your device is closed, but you are logged in in your device. That is, your device is switched off, the power is switched off of the device, but it is having the access to the power source as well. Now what happens is this, how the offense happens, or you may fall a victim of this. So what happened with this girl was, the device was connected to the power station or the power point, but the device was switched off, but she was constantly logged in. And at some point of time, she received, now it doesn't happen in a day. It happens over a period of time. So some point of time, she received some mail which contained a malware. Now that malware got installed into the device. And the offender who had sent it, the hacker who had sent it, now had the access or a remote access to the device. So what used to happen is, remotely the device could be switched on, remotely the camera could be switched on, and remotely the pictures could be obtained. So she was having this device in her home, in her hostel room, and of course, since she believed that it was her private area, she dressed, she undressed, she did all the things that a normal human being would do in a private room where the person believes that no one is watching. And her pictures were in this way were captured by installing a malware in the device. Ultimately, she was blackmailed for it, and of course, the pictures appeared on some pornographic sites and other places. And it was then the investigation was carried on. Now, I'm telling this only for the reason that there are some things why we should be logged out of all our accounts, why we should not be, we keep on receiving some links, why we should not open mails or messages from untrusted sites. So, or from places which we do not know. Something that is happening very recently is, I have received some messages of the kind, which keep on saying that looking into your account, you have been qualified for a loan of so and so amount. Now, I ask a question to myself, or every person should ask a question to oneself is, have I applied for loan to any financial institution? I have not. So how is it that someone knows as to what is my worth and how much loan should be sanctioned to me? How is it that someone knows that I am in need of money? I'm not in need of money. I'm not in need of any loan. I'm not inquiring for any loan. But this kind of message comes in. Now what happens is, at least 5 people in 100 will think that, okay, someone is giving me loan at a 0% interest. I will check this out, what the link is. The moment you click on the link, your safety of your device is compromised, because you would be taken to some place which would be a fake site, which would be a false site, where you would end up compromising with sharing your username or your, these are all phishing or smishing attacks. One of the examples that happens is that you receive a phone call saying that the person is from a call center of a bank. The person asks you your details, like, are you a customer of so and so bank, are you holding an account in so and so bank, and then you are told that there is some problem with your KYC documents, or there is some problem with your account, or there is some problem with your credit or debit card, and you are asked to divulge the details. So this was initially a few years back, that is how they used to do. They still do it in that way. These are all phishing and smishing attacks. They do it in this way. And if you divulge the information, the guy is lucky and you are the unlucky person, because you have given out your bank details and account details to that person. But over a period of time, with the people constantly being told about not to divulge the information, there is a new way in which this fraud occurs. So the person doesn't ask you your bank details. The person only asks you is whether you are a customer of a particular bank. Then you are told that you will receive a message. You are either told that the bank is upgrading its software, or you are told that there is some issue with your account. A message, you just have to click on the link and you have to fill in your details. What you feel is that I'm not divulging my information. I'm receiving the link and I would be putting it on the bank's website. The moment you click on the link, you are taken to a fake website which looks exactly like your bank's website. There is no difference in the physical appearance of the site, except for the fact that it is a fake website. What you do is you put in your username, you put in your password, and you have compromised with the details of your account, because you are doing it on a rigged or a fake website. So the best way to not get trapped in such a fraud is not to click on any link that you receive. The best way is never to click on any link which diverts you to any other site. Suppose you receive such phone call and you genuinely believe that it was from a bank and you feel that you should do something about it. The best thing is go to your bank branch physically and inquire. If you are not in a position to do that, in your device, open a new browser window, and in the browser window, you type your bank's web address with your hands, not copy paste it from anywhere. And thereafter you log into that site, and then after you can check it. That is how you have to do it. But one thing that you have to remember is you should not click on any link that you receive which will take you to some site or which will take you to some window where you are required to divulge your personal information. Now, these are the few things that we have to keep in mind as to keep ourselves safe in all aspects, safe in social aspects, safe in from being defrauded and losing our money or losing our privacy, and being safe on the internet. Internet is not something which should be afraid of. After all such things are told, many people feel that then this is not a safe place to be. It is a great place to be. And in this pandemic situation, it has brought all of us very close. See, I am sitting in some other city and you all are sitting in some other city, and still we are able to interact and be here together. And many people who have logged in, who are not a part of this meeting, but who have logged in on the YouTube, are able to hear me, and maybe they may be on in any corner of the world. But that is the beauty of this technology that has brought us together, which has made the world so small. And it has its own advantages, which I think should be more in our interest. Instead of being afraid of all the things, we can be safe, and it's always better to be safe than be sorry subsequently. So these are some tips that I think we should all remember, so as to keep ourselves safe when we are treading into this internet world and the technological world. And I think I should take a break over here and stop a little bit. If there are any questions, Pararkar sir, I think I'll be
Yes.
good to go on with the answers.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. Students, Aryan Sonsale, you were
Yes,
having
sir.
some question? Yes.